So I opened up this video with a series of pictures of David Bowie that are outtakes from the photo sessions that were used in the making for the album cover art of Heroes. Here's the photo that was selected, and here's the finished album cover art. These photos easily show Bowie's charisma in just a small series of expressions and gestures. This album covers a celebrated design, and so is this one. It's the cover art for Bowie's penultimate album, The Next Day, which got a lot of press and blog attention when it was released. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video, is the album cover art for Heroes and The Next Day, Bowie's album cover art in general, and my own personal affinity for album cover art. Although vinyl has made a small comeback, the reality is there's been a lot of degeneration of album cover art in the internet age. 300 by 300 pixel images meant for your smartphone. And I suppose that's why we get something like this, Adele's giant head, because it will fill an iPhone screen. And I suppose this is why we also get this. David Bowie smart enough to realize people don't have a physical connection to a record anymore. And so why not trash it? Trash the image, the album cover art, completely unnecessary now. A lot of the tangible pleasures of music purchasing evaporated in the digital age. Browsing, shopping, exploring. If I had discovered or heard about the Smiths for the first time and I had $10 to spend, which album did I choose first? What did I spend my money on? Did I pick this or this? Holding two records by the same artist in your hands, which image makes you buy? An album is not something you delete. It takes up physical space in your hands and in your house. Before the internet, the discovery of a new artist, at least for me, did happen in record stores. A magazine like Rolling Stone barely touched the surface of music that was available. Certainly, it didn't cover underground music or things happening on the fringes, so you'd go to a good record store. I used to buy music based on album cover art alone. I'd purchase things without ever having heard a song off the record. I'd look at the record cover, and if I thought it was artistically interesting to me, I would purchase the record. And this method of buying records through album cover art has served me well all through my teenage years and all through college.
Here come the harvest buns, a belly full for everyone. Eating rows, they're dominoes, they're sick as a pig when morning comes. Round bum bum, flesh gun gun.
Warriors, see slaughter rise. Warriors cannot hide.
So he wrote to friends in Rome, a senator who owed him a favor, asking for an executioner, so Paul could make his exit as a martyr. The senator sent this answer. He said, should you be so lucky like Saint Sebastian?
When sizing up an album cover that featured an individual performer or a group, my criteria always was, do they look cool? Are these characters people I would like to buy a record from? Under this criteria, why wouldn't you buy a Bowie album? There's an incredible amalgamation of sex and the sexless, the aloof and the engaged, the trashy and the swank. Bowie looks incredible, impeccable on almost every album cover. There are very few artists who have the ability to hold an album cover simply through their presence. Elvis Presley, Eartha Kitt could be one of them. Heino from Germany, always rocking his glasses. Then there are those artists that go beyond their mere presence, and they use art and design combined with vigorous aesthetics to create a highly individualistic persona. I've always enjoyed the cohesive design and inscrutable nature of the Jandek album covers. And with a discography of over 60 records, now are becoming beyond mythological.
I'd go to the Everglades for you.
Grace Jones is probably the equivalent of Bowie in her mix of raw sexuality tempered with androgyny, and this deft mix of the commercial with the exotic. Jones always has the look of simmering tension while seemingly being completely detached. Madonna is another artist working at Bowie's level, her constant reinvention and spotting and recontextualizing trends. Notice how similar these outtakes are from Madonna's first album cover to the Heroes outtakes we already looked at. Throughout his career, Bowie has used a visual language that points to the futuristic, the modern, the alien, the otherworldly, without actually ever displaying technology. And this intimation of science fiction, minus the hardware, has been a huge influence on other artists that emulated Bowie's vision. Here's Gary Newman driving a car that isn't there. I always liked this album cover because I thought it communicated the kind of emotional divide and disconnection that happens to people in urban environments. Here are a few more examples of evoking a sterile future with nothing but makeup and a little lighting. Which brings me to this stellar image, Bowie's cover for Aladdin Sane. It's an image that is endlessly imitative, and it's so successful because it embodies fashion, science fiction, glamour, the strange, something sensual and asexual at the same time. It suggests something of the future. Toya Wilcox, heavily indebted to Bowie's look. New Wave's favorite pirate, Adam Ant. Another Adam from today. But it's really David Bowie's Berlin trilogy that channels the most technological dysphoria both in music and image. The album cover to Low is an equally loved image, imitated over and over. There's something about the balance between the hoodie, the upturned collar, and the profile that has a pleasing aesthetic value. Even though the well-designed album cover of Lodger barely has this type of influence, I'd like to point out the similarity between the cover art and this Egon Schiele drawing. David Bowie did study mime. But obviously, Bowie thought the Heroes cover was the most iconic because this is the one he chose to subvert for the next day. There's something about this mysterious gesture that people just want to do. Even with the formal, studied nature of the pose and Bowie's removed expression, the image is inviting. The complete focus of the eyes. Is this expression robotic, or is it transcendental? The fingers on each hand purposefully composed, as if it's a card from some defunct sign language, a hidden language. Here is another hero we lost recently, and this famous gesture, to me, is a great embodiment of the hero's cover. As a gesture that's been absorbed completely into the culture, it has a lot of great dichotomies, something that reflects logic and the loving, the scientific and the humane. The live long and prosper gesture rests between the spiritual and the secular. And it's not too long after Bowie's cover here that other artists began incorporating enigmatic hand gestures into their album cover art. Annie Lennox providing us with her own contact points for the album Touch. Lena Lovitch in a Zen-like stance for her album Stateless. Laurie Anderson seemingly promoting religion and technology without a crucifix or a computer screen in sight. Here's the famous tagline from Heroes: "Tomorrow belongs to those who can hear it coming." The colorful suit, the red hair, the hand gestures, the title Hesitant Alien. The influence still felt 37 years later. The brilliant Next Day album cover subverting Bowie's legacy before death, mischievously vandalizing something admired, the word heroes crossed out. But under that big white block, we still see him. He's there, even if just a little. Which brings me to David Bowie's final and last album cover, the one for Black Star, released just 2 days before his death. And there's more to this graphic than most consumers might notice. Bowie was a star, a huge one. And critics of movies and music will often rate these things based on stars. There's that line of star parts at the bottom, fractured but organized. So perhaps it's a commentary on Bowie being more than the sum of his parts. But this is really here because it hieroglyphically spells out Bowie. Something that completely visually eluded me. A friend had to point it out over Facebook. But this is totally in line with this idea of a hidden meaning or a hidden language. Bowie spent his entire career being an outsized personality that made the alien accessible for the masses. So it makes sense to use one of the most basic symbols of the cosmic. But we also can't forget that a star is actually a sun, and the thing that burns brightest and gives us life. But that all suns eventually go out, implode, and extinguish. The most significant element to the Black Star cover is that out of the 25 wonderful, invigorating albums David Bowie released in his lifetime, the last one, the final one, is the only one that doesn't contain his image.